Anthony Albanese, thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me on the program, Lee.
The government's today merged various departments, cutting the total number from 18 to 14. Doesn't it make sense to try to find some economies of scale within the bureaucracy?
Well, the problem here is, Lee, that 5 departmental secretaries have lost their job today at the same time as Angus Taylor is still in his. And it has been an Angus horribilis. This is a rolling problem for the government. It's prepared to hold on to this minister. And secondly, regarding the bureaucratic changes, the problem here is that you'll have multiple cabinet ministers reporting to the same department, and it really represents a centralisation of power effectively with the Prime Minister.
But I guess you could flip that around and say the centralisation might mean that people are able to better coordinate across various areas and so forth.
Look, from time to time there might be a case there, but take some of the issues that have to be dealt with, such as water allocation, the environment, agriculture. You have different interests, and one of the things that government should do is to have those coordination comments when issues come before the Cabinet. What we've seen with this Prime Minister is a restructuring without any consultation with the departments themselves. And I find that quite remarkable that yesterday afternoon, departmental secretaries got phone calls telling them they'd lost their job and their departments had disappeared.
We're at the end of the parliamentary year, so let's whip around the few of the big political issues at the moment. On emissions reduction in Australia, you've been saying that you don't want to commit to a target before the next election because circumstances change and so forth. If Labor is setting its policy based on science, scientists are actually now saying that the Paris targets are going to be insufficient to keep global warming to an acceptable level. Is it possible that by the next election your target could be more than that 45% by 2030?
Well, the problem is there, Lee, that target was set in 2015. So the problem was that half the period in which the target would operate was gone in terms of by the time of the next election, 2022. We will look at the science. We'll also look at where we are at 2022 or in the lead up to it. We'll obviously set some targets in 2021, but we can't do that in advance. And we also don't want to let the government off the hook. We don't want to say, don't worry about what you do over the next couple of years, because we will say what we're doing from opposition. We're not the government, and the government needs to act on climate change. And the truth is that it hasn't got an energy policy for the country, and it hasn't put appropriate mechanisms in place.
Will you consider reinstating the Gillard-era carbon pricing scheme, which did reduce emissions?
No, we'll look at mechanisms going forward.
But that did work.
We're looking forward, not going back. During the last election campaign, we looked at the National Energy Guarantee was essentially the basis of going forward. We thought that was a mechanism that would have worked and we would have supported it. The government abandoned its own policy, and we will, well before the next election, put forward a comprehensive suite of policies, but they'll be one based upon our values and the principle, which is that strong action on climate change should create jobs, should reduce energy prices and reduce emissions. And it's very possible to do all three.
In the federal election this year, research from the Grattan Institute showed that only one group moved to Labor, and that was the wealthiest 20% of Australians, largely comprised of people in the inner cities. What message does that send you as leader?
That we need to do better, Lee. We need to appeal to people in the cities, but in the outer suburbs, in the regions. On Tuesday, I'll fly to Barcaldine. I'll be in Emerald, Rockhampton, Gladstone, Bundaberg, Hervey Bay, Maryborough, all next week. And I'll be talking to Queenslanders about what issues they're concerned with. I've spoken to some mayors throughout that region in order to line up meetings. We'll be having public meetings. We'll be going to look at businesses and industry while we're there. We need to ensure that we're in a strong position to win government next time round. The truth is, if you look at the pendulum, a range of seats have gone away from us. We will require probably in the order of a 4% swing to us. What that means is that we need to be much more inclusive and appeal to people across a broader spectrum.
On the question of your appeal to working people, in your speech to the Labor caucus this week, you kept coming back to unions. Rather than seeing things through the prism of unionism, when most Australians aren't members of unions, wouldn't it be more relevant to the modern Australian economy to find ways to talk to, say, the bloke who's a tradie who's driving for Uber on the weekend to get a bit of extra cash?
It's not either or, Lee, and I've done that. I spoke about about that very issue when I was in Perth at the first vision statement on jobs and the future of work. We need to appeal to people, whether they're self-employed, small businesses, contractors, or whether they're in unions or not in unions, whether they work full-time or part-time. And indeed, I think there's a huge opportunity for us as well to engage more constructively with business, because this government doesn't have a plan. We're saying that we need to talk about the creation of wealth as well as its distribution, and we want to make sure that we improve the economy, but we do so not as an end in itself, but to lift up living standards. The fact is that so many people are struggling because wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living.
Since 1945, Labor's entered government just 3 times federally, with Whitlam Hawke and then Rudd. What do you think are the conditions that make Australia decide, yes, we are prepared to now give a progressive government a go?
You have to put the agenda for change, and you need to make sure that people know that they will get security through that change. The Conservatives offer either no change at all or a wind-back of gains that have been made. And the truth is that we live in a fast-changing world. People are worried about what jobs will be available for their kids in the future. People are worried about climate change and its impact on our natural environment and the increasing number as well as intensity of extreme weather events. We need a government that's prepared to acknowledge what the problems are and present positive policies for the future. I'm optimistic about Australia's future. We will have a comprehensive suite of policies, we'll engage with people, we'll be inclusive, and I'm confident that just 6 months after what was a considerable defeat, we have regrouped. We've had the review, that's now in the rear vision mirror. We're now looking forward. On Saturday, I give my 3rd vision statement. Ironically, given the shutting down of Parliament today, it is about democracy, about media reform, constitutional change, all of those issues of how we increase genuine participation in our democracy.
As I mentioned before, Parliament's finished for the year. If this is our final interview for the year, thank you very much for being regularly available to speak to our viewers and do difficult interviews and so forth, and best wishes to you for Christmas and the New Year.
Thanks very much, Lee, and as Naomi Wolf would say, Merry Christmas.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.